Okay, nightshade is like a super common weed. It's probably in your garden, right? Milkweed is supposed to be toxic. Horse nettles are toxic. Water hemlock's toxic. Buttercups are toxic, except for things can eat them. White snake root. Y'all probably have white snake root. It's on the list of toxic forages. First thing I would say is your garden has toxic plants in it. You ever eat one? That's because you're looking at the plants and you're selecting which ones you're going to eat. Well, your animals are better botanists than you are, and they make a 24-hour day business of being good botanists. I am not saying that if you took a grain-fed animal that never saw pasture and put it in your pasture, it wouldn't go straight to the yellow flag and eat it and die. None of these rules is hard and fast, but the fact is that it's their business to know what they ought to eat. And if they have any knowledge of their own business, there's every bit the same chance that you have of not walking into your garden and eating nightshade, which is probably there. Makes pretty little purple star-shaped flowers, and it belongs to the tomato family. They're not going to eat their toxic forages. So it is possible that you'll put an animal in your pasture and it'll go out and eat a toxic forage and die. But there are three possibilities that are a whole lot more likely. The first one we've just talked about. They won't eat it. The second one, they'll eat it, and they're self-medicating. A forage is only toxic in some of its parts, some of the time, in some dosage, right? If you're on blood pressure medication, if you take Tylenol, if you take dietary supplements like iron or calcium, you are taking in toxicities at a level that you deem to be good for your health. And that is exactly what an intelligent grazed animal is perfectly capable of doing. If I take an animal off my best pastures, meaning the ones that look the prettiest, and I move them into a weedy pasture, my knowledgeable animal will walk into a paddock. Her tummy's already full. She's not desperate. She's got her whole new paddock spread in front of her, and she will walk to certain plants and she will eat certain leaves. And until she's done that, she won't settle down to, say, the clover or the pretty young orchard grass. She'll walk to the bindweed and the milkweed and the horse nettles. Anybody pasture horses? You got horse nettles in your pasture, and it's toxic in some concentration, some of the year, and some of its parts. But your animal knows more about self-medicating with that than you do. We can spray it, and then we can feel all safe, no toxic forages out there, or we think we can. And now we've got to worm our animals, and we've got to use other medications on our animals, because what we've done is destroyed their pharmacopoeia. Let it be. Third option. So option number one, they won't eat it. Option number two, they will, and they're self-medicating. Option number three, and this is a very real option, it ain't poisonous. There are sites out there that are reprints of sites, reprints of sites, reprints of sites, go 25 years back to an error. And I will give you one example. Look up hemp dogbane, which we have a ton of. It's invasive. Every grassman in our area knows that it's a favorite forage. And if you turn your cows into a paddock with hemp dogbane, first they'll eat the hemp dogbane and then they'll settle down to other things. If you look it up, toxic forage, spray it. List of 12 herbicides to spray it with to get rid of it. It's toxic. 6 to 8 leaves will kill them. It's toxic. Well, we all knew better, but we thought, where the heck did that one come from? 2016, Penn State issues a no longer available, I might add, bulletin that says, oops, 25 years ago somebody looked at that leaf and thought it was oleander, which will kill you. 6 to 8 leaves will kill you. So they labeled this plant, and ever since then, the USDA, every DA in the 50 states, and every purveyor of herbicides has recommended that you poison the heck out of it and made it sound really scary. Think about the millions of tons of herbicide that have been sprayed on a non-toxic forage. I might add that that bulletin disappeared offline in 6 months' time. I contacted Penn State. They hemmed and hawed, and they finally said, it was archived at the request of the researcher. I made a great discovery, and I published it. Now I want you to archive it. I don't know why they archived it, but if you really want a copy, get hold of me, because I have it, and I got them to tell me I had permission to put it out there. It's not a toxic forage. So when you see it listed as toxic, ask yourself, first, are they right? And second of all, what parts, in what concentration, at what times of the year? All of this is great, and it tells us how we feed the soil and how we feed our ruminants and how everything on the farm is getting fatter and healthier except us. And now we're going to talk about how it gets us fatter and healthier. There's a tendency to think of things that aren't human as natural and things that are human as the products of culture. But we're as much a part of this ecology. You can't find a place except for maybe on Antarctica that has not had its ecology affected by human culture. And we have a rightful beneficial place in our farm culture. And part of that place is that it feeds us. We work really hard at eliminating the necessity for off-farm inputs by creating this living web, this pattern of things feeding into other things, feeding into other things, feeding. I have this beautiful chart, but I'm not an artist, so it doesn't look very good, that starts at the bottom with grass and has all these lines doing this, and at the top, all this coming out is clean water and clean air. That's your farm, right? And inside of that, everybody has an abundance of food and health and minerals because that's what a farm is good at doing. But nature's balance without human assistance has some pretty big swings, like drought and flood, feast and famine, predator and prey cycles, right? Boom and bust populations. Nature would also eliminate some things we kind of like the domestic chicken does not have much of a future except that it be domestic. Ditto the dairy cow. Corn is an example of a plant that only lives under cultivation. So since we have a personal interest in what kind of ecological balance our farm has, we have a right to reach into it, alter it, and make it feed us back. With grass harvest, we're harnessing the biggest solar collector on the farm, the grasslands, and we're harvesting it with things that can turn that into food for us and for the other animals on the farm. I'm running ruminants on my grass, and they're converting my grass into fat and protein. And if I harvest it as meat, it's a once and done proposition, and it's a once a year or once every 2 years proposition. Even if I'm breeding animals on the farm, I'm only going to be harvesting on a fairly long cycle. This is why we're so attached to dairy. A dairy animal in real time turns yesterday's photons into today's proteins, sugars, and fats. Stop and think about that one for a minute. Sunlight, grass leaf, 24 hours later, it's cream in my coffee and butter on my toast and milk on my oatmeal. Oh, and don't let me overlook manure. It's also coming out the back end of her at the rate of 11 tons a year in the form of microbe-assisted, semi-broken down carbon to build my soil. This is like the definition of a free lunch. I manage ruminants on something I can't eat, and it's turned into future fertility and future food and food in real time, and the highest quality food known to man. Long before we figured out how to dig a hole in the ground and put a seed in it, we were managing animals for milk. Whole cultures have evolved and survived for thousands of years around a ruminant's ability to turn grass, turn leaves of some kind into fat, sugars, and proteins. Interesting fact. Now, when somebody says to you, feed that pig milk, the first thing that we 21st century minds think of is, hell no. I mean, that's $4.50 in the store. It'd be more if they knew it was raw and all grass. I can't feed that to my pigs. We're going to rethink that whole picture. If you go back to that neat Cornell online ag library we were telling you about, one of the first things you're going to find out, not because it'll tell you, but because it'll reference it so often that you'll realize they assume you know it. Every old farm book prior to 1950 assumes that you know that the number one food on your farm at any time
for
any animal, pigs, chickens, young ruminants of any kind, is your skim milk, buttermilk, extra milk, whey, colostrum. Now think about it for a minute. Prior to about 1930, There were no refrigerators. There were very few, and people weren't buying them. I went and looked it up so I'd be able to reference this. So you don't see refrigeration until about 1940, but you don't see the rural electrification reaching out until later. So most folks had no refrigeration. Not only that, they didn't need it. If you've got a cow out back who's giving you milk every 12 hours, you got fresh milk coming in all the time. And you don't say to yourself, oh, I can't feed this to the hogs. It's coming in the back door faster and you can get it out the front, so you better be moving that milk, right? So we're going to talk about how milk feeds everybody on the farm.
Every farm had a milk cow.
This is literally true. 70 years ago, over 30% of the country was living on a farm. Most of those people had 1, 2, 3 cows. They weren't selling the milk. The other folk didn't need it. It was just a way to convert their principal solar energy capture into people food and manage their ground and improve it at the same time.
And it's so good.
And it's so good. So in the commercial model, you take a large animal, you put a whole bunch of them in a barn, and you shove subsidized grain, usually it's genetically modified these days, and a lot of other unpleasant things I won't talk about, but because I'm not here to bash the industry. But you're shoving a bunch of grain in an animal that was really made to eat leaves, and you're getting a ton of milk out of there. Average number of lactations, that is roughly years of useful life of a dairy animal in this country right now, is less than 2 lactations. That's how fast we burn them out and send them to be made into hamburger, because we're trying to get too much milk out of them.
We don't use Holsteins. We use a smaller Jersey or Jersey cross on grass only. We use absolutely no grain whatsoever. Now some people say, oh, you bring them in, you grain them when you're milking them, don't you? Nope, we give them hay when we're milking them. Okay, so they have absolutely no grain whatsoever, totally grass. Live on pasture, enjoy the weather. They raise their own calves, and we're going to talk about how they do that. Moderate production, okay, although these cows, we've got 2 that we're milking right now. One's giving us 2 gallons a day, and one is giving us 3 or 4 gallons a day.
Probably 3.
And how long ago did they calve?
These guys are way late in their lactation. No, it's not that. They're like 9 months into their lactation.
Yeah, so plenty of milk for sure. They're, in the conventional dairy, if they were just given that much, certainly 2 gallons a day, they would be dried off.
Conventional dairy is looking at 50 to 70 pounds of milk out of a cow a day, which translates to like 6 to 10 gallons a day. 6 to 12 gallons a day.
And this is plenty, okay? Plenty for us. We're giving it to our son and his children. We're living close. We're giving it to them. Give some to the sisters. I mean, we have plenty. And this was, again, we used to do a herd share, which we don't do anymore. And so we're going to keep our animals 10 to 12 years. Okay? It's not 1, 2.
They'll be like 12 to 15 years before we're done with them.
And then we'll slaughter them on farm. Okay, so at the end of their life, we will butcher them, and we butcher our own cows. Everybody should have a homestead cow. Our website is One Cow Revolution, and so if you want to go out there and look at it, and Beth blogs on that. There are 2 different models that are being proposed here. One is you've got all the inputs coming in, and you're getting as much milk out of that cow as you can, and then you're burning her out, or you've got this other one where you're taking care of the cow is providing you with food. It is costless. Mostly.
It doesn't cost you in money, and it pays you in milk and manure.
Right, and there is almost no cost to it, which we think is really wonderful. I'm talking about what we consume. The amount of milk coming in varies, of course, with the season, but for us, we drink at least 2 gallons a day. 7 or 8 people at home.
John Paul doesn't count, he doesn't drink milk.
So, but we go through it easily 2 gallons a day. Several pounds of cheese, okay, per week. Several pounds of butter per week. Yogurt, kefir, sour cream, soft cheeses, soup and gravies, ice cream. Put it in bread and baked goods. And it's providing our meat as well. So all of that is coming from this animal that is living completely, totally on grass. Okay, that's just for the family.
So we're going to deal briefly with a problem that some people have, and that's the fact that the USDA says raw milk is going to kill you, right? Okay, first of all, up until the we won't even cover that. Pasteurizing milk is a modern invention. Unpasteurized milk is very healthy and good for you. It comes pre-inoculated. When you consume a fermented milk product, yogurt, kefir, buttermilk, clabber, any kind of cheese, the cultures that made that a cultured, a fermented milk product are natural to the milk. They're not like out there somewhere and you bring them and add them. You can boost them by doing that, but you don't have to. So milk comes naturally cultured, and the USDA actually knows this for the simple fact that although they will tell you that raw milk will kill you, if it's raw milk cheese that's 60 days old, it is now A-OK with the USDA. Now, how many foods do you know that start out rotten and end up not rotten? So we're going to touch why raw milk gets this bad reputation. I am not knocking the dairy industry. City people would not be able to drink milk if we did not pasteurize the milk that's coming off of large dairies. But the pathogen issues in conventionally raised milk are the result of production methods. If you take a whole lot of animals and you cram them into a barn, you can bust your backside trying to keep what comes out of them clean. Good luck. So we spend a lot of time trying to keep an unnatural environment clean enough to keep a very fragile, in the sense of easily broken down, food from being contaminated. Milk's a petri dish. Everybody wants some. Every airborne pathogen that lands in it wants a piece of it, right? Under normal, clean circumstances, those good bacteria that are naturally in your milk are going to outcompete the bad ones. That's why even commercial production milk goes from being bad for you and going to kill you the minute it comes out of the cow's udder to healthy for you 60 days later. That's because those good lactobacilli in that milk are going to outcompete the bad ones. They're going to be dead before you eat it. Okay, if we can keep those nasty things out and we leave our good bacilli alive, they're going to clean that milk out. So raw milk is self-defending and self-improving. Under the other part of the modern production method that makes it an issue is that machine milking requires inflations, miles of plastic tubing, and big bulk tanks, which are in constant use. So as hard as those good dairymen work to keep them clean, it's not like they can do what I do with my bucket, or what he does with my buckets. He's my bucket washer. Scrub them out with their hands, right? We know our buckets are clean because they get washed every day and get washed twice a day, and they get air dried. My hands are clean. My carefully washed and dried cow udder is clean. I have good, clean milk, and that raw milk is not going to hurt anybody. Yeah, question?
Is there a difference between, is there a place between self-milking and machine? Is there anything in between?
Yeah. There's that new milker.
Well, anything that's not your hands is a machine. But yeah, there's a lot of difference between hand milking at one end, pipeline at the other end, and then like a surge milker, or I don't know.
There's a new milker out there that we have some good friends. What's their Misty Morning?
Misty Morning Farms in Virginia.
And they sell them. And this one, the milk goes in the inflation and then goes straight to the jar or something?
Right.
So it's not going through lots of tubing.
The real issue is an awful lot of it has to do with the inability to clean the insides of those tubes. They work hard. They flush them with all kinds of toxic chemicals, very hot water. They have a little gadget they can run through the pipe under suction called a slug that'll try and clean it. Let's face it. Your little kids get the little curly Q thing and they drink milk through it a couple of times, and then what do you do with it? You throw it out because you can't clean it. And that's the situation in a big confinement dairy. Honest to goodness, those guys don't feed raw milk to their calves. And I've asked why not. And the answer is frank and unequivocal: because of pathogen issues. So be grateful that there is pasteurization because our modern production methods require it. But don't be afraid of your home-raised, hand milk, all grass milk, because there is no better food on the planet.
How many cows can you milk by hand for your family?
Do you mean how much milk can we drink, or how many cows?
How many people are milking?
How many can you do in a day?
I can milk 4 cows without undue strain by myself. Multiply that times as many people as.
So we've got, on the farm right now, we've got 5, 6 milkers.
Probably 6 people who milk, right?
And I've heard of Amish that, several in the family go out and milk.
When we do, our afternoon milking crew usually has 2 milkers in it. As far as like my comfort and the time involved, I can milk 3 or 4 cows if they didn't all freshen at the same minute. If they all freshened within a couple of weeks of each other, then there's a period of time when that's a ton of milk, and I'll end up with a little bit of, what do you call that?
Carpal tunnel.
Carpal, this is like, tendonitis, thank you, from just too much repetitive.
That's the problem with our daughter. She only do so many. Y'all have multiple stalls?
Yeah, we have 3 stanchions for milking in, and usually we're only using 2 of them because we don't usually need 3 milkers in the barn at once.
Are they elevated?
No, they're not. We'll show
No,
you
we're on a
pictures.
dirt floor, really simple. We try and keep it dry. That's the only thing.
Because we're hand milking, if you're thinking of like that ditch in between, since we're not using machines, we don't need to be able to get below the level of the cow. There was a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking of getting goats this springtime. Is everything you're saying kind of applies slash to a goat or any rumen? Are we just specifically talking about a cow, or can I gain as much?
A goat's chosen diet is somewhat different from a cow's. They're kind of at opposite ends. Cows will eat the finest stuff and goats will eat the roughest stuff, but there's not a hard line in there. There are a lot of terms for intensive rotational grazing, and I don't want to say it over and over again, so I just say rotational grazing. I'm going to say cow when I mean ruminant a lot of the time. A few things are specific, like I would leave a cow out in whether I would barn a goat for, right?
How many people are currently milking or have milked cows or goats?
We have people come out to the farm, and they are milking, and they've never milked before.
Before we get started again, we've been asked to just go over briefly, compare and contrast the 3 major ruminants that you are likely to find yourself milking in North America now. Camels are unlikely, and they're not really ruminants anyway. So we're going to stick with cows, goats, and sheep. Cows are going to eat the most, and they're in general, with a wide range of possibility, they're going to tend to eat grass and weeds, right? So they're going to tend to eat the softer forages. They are also going to like to eat tree branches and tree leaves and briars, but not as much of those. They're going to produce the most milk. That milk is going to be excellent for drinking and especially for getting cream off of and making butter, okay? So in the range of milks, people who like distinctions like this will say cows for butter, sheep for cheese, goats for drinking milk. I don't agree with them, but those aren't bad ways to think about it. If you want butter, cows are going to give you your best bet at it. If you want just to make cheese, you're going to get less milk, but it's twice as dense when it comes out of a sheep. Goat's milk is highly digestible as a drink. So cows, goats, sheep. Cows like the finest forage. Sheep are they graze the widest range of things from briars down to clover. They're very good at eating your broadleaf weeds. This is the tall stuff that we call weeds, and a botanist might call a forb. And think things like ironweed and goldenrod and milkweed. I mean, when you drive past a field that hasn't had anything done to it for a year or two, and that's all that tall stuff like this, that's forbs. And 2 months, if it's this tall, 2 months ago it was down here and it was great sheep food. And sheep will do a good job at getting that under control and helping get sunlight down to the next layer down where your grass is trying to grow. Sheep milk is excellent for making cheese with. It's kind of weird for an American to drink it because it's thick. Goats will eat the coarsest stuff, although if you buy a dairy goat for dairy purposes, it's probably been barned and fed the highest quality hay and sweet feed to get it to give you the least goaty tasting milk it can give, right? This is true of cows and it's true of sheep, but it's really true of goats because they're going to eat the gnarliest stuff and they're going to have the strongest flavors in their milk as a result of that. If you like it, you love it, and if you don't like it, you think something's wrong. And then you barn it, and you give it alfalfa hay and sweet feed, and now we're in the imports-exports business again. Goat's milk is great for drinking. A lot of people who can't drink other kinds of milk can drink goat's milk. Cows give you the most milk. They manage for grass really, really well. They are good at eating grass and improving their own pastures. And if you want butter, and who doesn't want butter? Cows are your best friends. A goat will give you plenty of cream, but you'll have to have a mechanical separator to get much out of that.
They're naturally homogeneous.
Because the fat particles are tiny, and so they don't rise to the top very well.
How much milk does a sheep give?
A good producing sheep, when she's given her most, is usually expected to give like 2, maybe 3 quarts. And she's probably going to dry herself off. Does anybody here milk sheep?
We've never milked sheep.
Yeah, it's real popular in Europe for cheese milk. But I think also that they tend to have a shorter lactation period.
Don't they dry off like after 3 months or something?
I don't know how fast it is. I just have that in the back of my head. Okay, I think it also is a shorter lactation.
Now we're going to look at all the things that milk can do. We talked about the fact that milk feeds us, and raw milk, raw cow's milk. There are people who say, oh, I can't drink milk, and some of the sisters have said, we can never drink raw cow's milk. And then, we could never drink cow's milk, and we give them raw cow's milk, and they can drink it. So there are some things that, through the processing of milk, that makes it a problem for people, that when they drink raw milk, it's not a problem. So now I'm going to talk about calves, okay? So we raise our calves. What the conventional dairies will do is, with a bull, they will try and get rid of it immediately. They'll take it off the mother maybe a day.
With a bull calf.
Bull calf, yeah. They'll try and get rid of it just immediately. They don't see any use for it. We will pick up some of those, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And they're very cheap, $15. Sometimes they're free, just because nobody wants a dairy bull. Okay.
This isn't actually true of Holsteins because they're big. So we're talking about the smaller animals that you would be keeping.
Like the Jerseys. And so we raise them for steers, and then we eat them for meat. And we really like them. But standard, what would happen with their heifers, okay, is that they would, for raising those, they give them a milk or 1.5 gallons per day. Now, this is usually after the first day, even with the heifers, isn't it?
Right. This is a gallon or 1.5 gallons. If that heifer calf is lucky, she got 1 nursing, and there's a good chance she didn't, because if you've got a dairy with 500-600 cows in there, and you've got cows calving every day, you're just getting that calf out of the calving shed and into the nursery as fast as you can. So
And they're not even giving it milk. As Beth was saying, they're not going to give it, they certainly wouldn't give it their raw milk.
They'll pasteurize first.
They'll pasteurize first, and then they often will not even give them that milk. They will give them milk replacer. Okay, so that's how people are raising those. Often they will give them some grain, which kind of upsets their rumen as well, so that their rumen is not so good.
The goal in a commercial model is to get that animal on the cheapest feed as fast as possible, and also to adjust its rumen to the grain diet that it's intended to eat later. So in general, the practice for raising a calf it's not going to be on its mama. Now, this is not about beef animals, this is dairy. It won't be on its mama. It'll get 1 to 1.5 gallons of milk a day, and from day number 2, it's going to be being offered sweet feed, some kind of grain feed, to give it concentrates, bump up the amount of nutrients it's taking in, and adjust its rumen to grain.
The other problem is that they would say, if you were to give this, if you were to just leave this calf on its mother, it would get scours, there would be all kinds of problems.
Too much.
So you don't want to do that. Well, we have not found that in our experience. We leave that calf on its mama from the beginning. So it's getting all the colostrum that first few days.
3, 4, 5 days.
Colostrum that is really super milk. So they're getting that, and then we just leave it on there and let it milk as it wants, okay? We don't separate. We will bring in the cow, and we will milk the cow, and then we'll put it back out with the calf. Now, we can only do that for a little while, especially if it's a little bull, before it starts taking a ton of milk. So we are, we should be getting lots and lots of milk, and we're seeing that our milk depletion, the people's milk is really depleting.
And the reason for that is a cow, when she lactates, starts to give X amount of milk, and that's going to go up for a bit in a bell curve till about 2 months into her lactation to match the demand that her calf would be putting on her, right? So he takes a gallon a day, and that goes up very quickly. When we take a bull calf off of a cow, first couple of days, she'll give us 5, 6 gallons right away. Well, you know what? That's how much she was given when that calf was on her. So that's what he was getting, right? Much better fed cow. You can see it in their affect, in their energy level, in the way they behave. You know, at 3 days, they're rocking it around the pasture like they're on rocket fuel or something, and they grow very quickly. Yes, ma'am?
Something that I learned is that the nutrition enables genetic expression. So those calves are expressing
Being
themselves
calves, that's right.
genetically
Yes,
in their size and
Interesting.
their capacities
Right.
much more readily.
yes.
If you left them, how long would they nurse?
Well, I got a cow out back that I'm having the hardest time getting her little bull to leave her alone.
Well, you know, that's what they do with meat cows, you know, is that they
7,
just
8,
leave
9
them
months
on.
is a good rough answer.
So meat cows, it happens all the time. It just doesn't happen with dairy cows because the milk is too expensive. It's cash to them. It's not cash to us. To us, it's really healthy calves. So at some point, when the milk gets too depleted for me, for the farm, then we will separate the calf. Usually, we'll either take it away at the night or the day, okay, so that we at least get half the milk coming in, and then we'll leave the calf on her for half the time. Then we'll go to bucket milking after that. How long will we leave them on the cow?
If I decide to, like if I have a little unmannerly bull calf that's tearing up mama's softer part, I'll take him off of her completely, and then I'll be giving him something between 1.5 gallons and 2.5 gallons a day out of a bucket, and then he's also getting pasture. And
I'm
that'll be
not
for
very
14
crazy about
weeks.
milking the cow and then immediately giving it to the calf. So I'd rather the calf just take it, and then I don't have to milk it. So then we can separate them for half the time, and that still works for a while. But at some point, we do wean them off. And I guess it really does have to do, usually it's when the mother, when her udders or teats are getting beat up.
But-
Then we will separate the calf completely. And generally what we do is we'll bring him or her back to our home pasture. It's about 1.5 miles down the way, so that they are separated. And for a few days, they let us know about it. And the sisters have to live with a cow that's bellowing.
So when we use the term wean, we mean two things. Sometimes that just means taking calf away from mama, but he's still on milk out of a bucket or a bottle. Weaning from milk is when they stop getting milk at all. On our place, a calf's going to have milk for at least 14 weeks, so a little bit past 3 months. And if we have plenty of milk, it's going to go on longer, just because we know more milk, the better the calf.
Yeah, the calves. And again, the milk is the superior food. So we try and leave them on that as long as we can. So we will often bring in bought-in calves like this. This came from one of the dairies. Okay, so these have been given a little bit of colostrum. They've been a day with their mother, maybe. So these are day-old calves that we pick up for next to nothing, $15 or something like that. There's a lot of difficulties with diseases, weakness, poor genetics. In the best of all possible worlds, we would get one of our mamas to adopt it for a little while, and we've had a little bit of success with that. We had one cow that just adopted every calf in the world.
She'd steal a calf from its own mama and switch it over to her.
Yeah, she was a neurotic cow, but we do not have her anymore. So that would be the best of all possible worlds. Other than that, we would go to the bottle or the bucket as soon as we could. We do not use milk replacer. We have found milk replacer to be a disaster. We have some friends who will be bottle feeding from the same dairy. They'll pick up some, we'll pick up some. They didn't have a cow, so we were feeding them milk. They were feeding milk replacer, and the calves there's a world of difference.
The nutrition rate with little dairy bulls is very high. They're coming on your farm already disadvantaged. And if you lose 50%, you are not unlike the norm, right? They're cheap, they're disposable. Little dairy bulls have a hard time living. So we had to spend some time developing a protocol to keep them alive as well as we could.
For 2 days, we give them colostrum. Now, when we're milking our cows, when they freshen, they're giving more colostrum than the calves are going to take. Okay, so the calf's drinking off and
Not
getting
if the
colostrum.
calf is on them, but if we've pulled the calf off.
No, if the calf's still on.
you're right.
If the calf's still on them, we're still milking that cow and we're getting colostrum. We are not drinking the colostrum for the 3 days. So we're freezing it and putting it in the freezer. And then we use that as super medicine milk. And so when we get calves from bought-in calves, we start off and we give them 2 days of colostrum. And that really bumps them up. They start doing a lot better. Then for 2 weeks, we put an egg in their milk. Now, I don't know, we heard that from somebody. I don't know why the
Something to
egg
do
makes
with
a
the
difference.
albumin slowing the milk so it doesn't pass through them too fast, because your big danger with, you got 2 big problems with calves. They'll get scours, which is just it's farmers' talk for diarrhea. And if that nutrition is moving through them that fast, they're losing water and they're not absorbing their food, and you got to slow it down. My vet swears that egg can have nothing to do with slowing the milk down, but the fact is that ever since we started putting egg in there, we have not had a problem with scours, so I'll take that for proof until I learn better.
Okay, so we have a week at a half gallon and then a week at 3/4 gallon.
And that's always twice a day.
Okay. And then we move them to milk alone. Okay, and that can be milk or it could be skim or buttermilk, but it oftentimes is full whole milk. And all of these are twice a day. It's definitely less than our mamas, the calves that are on their mama, okay? Because we don't know how much they're getting exactly until we pull them off and discover just how much milk we're getting. And that's after it's been a while. The other problems is that they don't have the mother to teach them the forages to eat, okay? Which is not as good. So we try and make sure that they get the best pasture. They're not doing much grazing at this age, but they will.
You want what they take in to be the best you've got, right? So if that particular animal, a newborn calf is more than likely going to slip out under your single strand of white string that's holding your cow in, and he's going to get out, let him do it, because he's moving out and finding the most palatable forages. He's not going to hurt your pasture, but he's going to get an advantage from grazing that instead of whatever's left by the big cows.
And if they do get scours, which is an intestinal imbalance, and you see it as yellow, really yellow.
No, more white,
Okay.
but very runny. White, stinky, runny poops, that's scours.
Okay, and then we give them water with electrolytes, colostrum if we still have some, and then a milk egg pectin mix, 2 or 3 feedings. And then as soon as we can, we get them back to milk.
And that pectin's sure gel, just like what you find in the store.
Then what we do is we keep these calves through one winter into the next fall, so they're about 14 to 18 months old, and then we butcher them on farm. We like the fact that they're a little bit smaller, so it's easier to butcher, and we've only got them on grass, again, no grain at all that they get.
A boost for jerseys.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
A boost for jerseys is people say that's a dairy cow, it's not going to make good beef. Don't believe them. Bob Evans, as in Bob Evans Restaurant, towards the end of his life, was a huge advocate of grass farming as the restoration of family farming in the United States. And he would say of his own herds that he'd like to have half Jersey genetics in all of his beef animals because Jersey meat is naturally marbled. It's wonderful beef, so don't let anybody kid you. And also, we always hear about this issue about grass-fed beef being tough. I don't know if it's because we hang for Rachel's down here going, I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's because we'll dry cure for 2 weeks before we butcher, but whatever the reason, don't take anybody else's word for it. Find out how yours do. We don't have any problem with tender meat.
I do think hanging has a lot to do with it, though. And butchers won't take the time to hang that way,
Also,
but because we're doing our own, we can hang for 2 weeks.
And we can hang at a higher temperature than the USDA lets people hang at. Yes, Rachel?
One other thing we've learned in our own research is that if you overcook it, it is tough. But undercooking it with, a little bit of pink left in it, perfectly tender.
Yeah. We grill a steak. I like mine nice and rare. And they're never too chewy. Yes, sir.
My butcher said that for the grass-fed, he likes 21 to 27 days.
Now, there's a great idea. Now, he's holding a lower temperature than we can. He's going to keep it right above freezing, but that's right.
Most butchers won't do that. I mean, that's clogging up their.
But if you walk into a really fancy butcher shop that sells top quality meat, the most expensive meat in the place is the stuff that's been hanging at 33 degrees for 2 months. They'll hang it a long time. So milk feeds the farm. Up,
You're hanging room temperature.
Not room temperature, we're hanging lower than that. We have, okay, so when we, well, we're gonna talk about butchering a little bit later. But we,
go ahead, because if we don't,
Yeah.
we'll address that question. When we hang beef, go ahead, because you're.
we have a cool room. We either do it in the winter, okay, so as it's coming in, so that's usually,
We want it to stay below 45. If it gets much above that, we're going to
so we're talking around Thanksgiving time is butchering time. But now we've got a cool room, so there's a cool bot thing that makes the
Y'all
air
know Cool
conditioner
Bot?
stay on.
It overrides an air conditioner.
And so it keeps that room cooler, we're finding it doesn't use a lot of electricity, and we can keep that meat hanging for a long time now.
Then we'll run it about 39 degrees, and we'll keep it that way for 2 weeks.
And what is CoolBot?
A cool bot is a little gadget, overrides the
Air
thermostat on an air.
On a window air conditioner and makes it stay on longer than it should.
Okay, so that's how, so it's sort of obvious, it's a no-brainer, that milk is what feeds calves. Let's look at all the other livestock on the farm that it feeds. And as we go through these different animals, you know, the animal triad on the American farm or on the Western farm is like the plant triad that fed the Indians, you know, corn, squash, beans. Cows, pigs, and chickens, they don't stand alone, they stand together. And we're going to look at how the cow's ability, the ruminant's ability to convert green leaves into fat, sugars, and proteins is going to feed every other animal on the farm, and very especially the pigs and chickens on the farm. So we think of pigs as being, you know, bacon and sausage, and they are corn-fed animals in our modern picture. Prior to 50 years ago or so, a pig was not a grain and soybean-fed animal that produced bacon and sausage. It served two vital purposes on the farm. It converted surplus and waste nutrients into a form that would store indefinitely. If it's in my pig, it's not biodegrading, right? It's stable. It converts them into more pigs. And it converts everything it doesn't use into high-quality compost, right? So a pig is not just a way to get bacon and sausage, it's a way to take every surplus on the farm. And when we get to the gardening section, we're going to go into this a lot more. But every perishable surplus on the farm into stable nutrients that reproduce. So looking at that from the point of view of dairy, every dairy person with a cow, you can kind of manage the amount of milk coming out of a goat. But once you get a cow, you need a pig. When you got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gallons of milk coming in the house every 24 hours, about 36 hours into that experiment, you're either going to lose your mind or you're going to go out and buy a pig. That pig can plow through as much milk as you put in front of it and turn it into stable nutrients. It's going to devour all of those cheese-making mistakes that your first year of making cheese is fraught with, and we'll go into that in a while. Buttermilk, skim milk, and whey are a pig's premium favorite food. Flip the pages back, go back 50 years, and you will discover that every farm-raising manual in the Western world assumes that your pig is already getting, that he's downstream from a cow, that your pig is already being fed dairy products. And in fact, dairy products will supply all of a pig's high-quality protein needs, which are the ones that are not satisfied by forage and not satisfied by roots. A gallon of milk will supply a pig's high-quality protein needs from 50 pounds, which is about weanling age, 35 pounds, 50 pounds weanling age, up to the 225 that is typical slaughter weight for today or further. The reason that that amount of milk doesn't change is that as a pig gets bigger, the percentage of its diet that needs to be high-quality proteins is dropping. So that 1 gallon of milk per day is your pig's high-quality protein needs for its lifetime till slaughter weight, right? What that means is that anything else you have on the farm can be used to fill in those other needs. I am not, never quote me as saying, Beth said that you could feed that hay nothing but sticks and weeds, that pig nothing but sticks and weeds and milk, and it'll thrive and get fat. What I'm telling you is your farm's going to generate a lot of surplus waste, low-quality stuff that's, past its edible stage for humans. And that, with that gallon of milk or 4 gallons a whey, is going to supply all of its needs as long as there's some variation in that diet, which there will be on a normal farm. You're not just giving it straw and milk all that time, but milk and whatever else the farm produces. Now, when somebody says, are you sure that pig's nutritional needs are being met? You can say a resounding, yes, I sure am, because milk is capable of providing a pig with all of its high-quality proteins. So one
It will grow slower.
But you're not in a race. I mean, 100 years ago, the growing time for a slaughter weight pig was typically something between a year, which was very fast, and 2 years, which was like the outside of normal. Today, you're expecting a pig to reach 225 pounds in 6 months, and he'll do it because you're shoving corn, soy, and other stuff in the front end and giving him nothing to do. That's the pig. The beauty of a pig is that a pig has an ability we don't have to go into maintenance mode when there's not a lot of food, and then when there is a lot of food, just ramp it up and grow really fast. So if we keep them ramped, they grow very fast, then we slaughter them and we get another lot in there. But if we're on a farm and that pig is about storing nutrients and converting them into compost for us, we're just about that storing and converting. And if it takes if it takes them 12 months to get to slaughter weight, I need a pig, so I don't mind it taking that long. So we buy our pigs from a local farm that raises them on deep litter. We used to raise our own hogs, and we found that for a farm of our size, feeding a boar all the way around the year and a breeding sow all the way around the year was taking nutrients away from the animals that we wanted to slaughter.
We were having problems with breeding, making sure that we were hitting, it was just...
We had a dud boar. But we always have hogs on the place because we always have nutrients that need to be going into a hog. We keep ours on deep bedding or on dirt. They eat seasonal food sources, so they develop more slowly. We'll go into a lot of different pig foods. Right now, I just want you to see how vital pigs are to cows and cows are to pigs in the nutrient cycle on an independent farm. And they have hay every day. They eat kitchen and table scraps. They eat spent plants from the garden. Forage, which would be cut grass, raked stuff that's available. Certain crops we grow just for them, which will go into where it fits into the farm cycle when we do gardening, but mangos, sugar beets, turnips, rutabagas, and non-GM corn and some small grains. And then they get a certain amount of off-farm feed to fill in the dips in our farm's nutrient provision cycle, and that would be a little bit of bought-in grain, a little bit of bakery waste, which is a great vehicle, by the way, for dairy surplus. Soak bread in your whey, and then they eat it really fast. And kitchen waste from the convent.
Okay, so I just have a few other notes about pigs. We do butcher them, and we butcher them when we run out of food. Okay, there's a real advantage to being able to butcher your own animals, because if you say, I've got to make a date with a butcher, okay, a lot of times they're not ready when you're ready, okay, or we call the butcher and they say, well, we're 6 months out for anything. Well, what do I do with this pig that's now ready to be butchered, and we're 6 months out from a butchering date? So being able to butcher your own really gives you a lot of...
It also saves you about 50 to 75 cents a pound on your finished meat.
For our housing, we use an open barn with a covered exercise area next to it. So it's a very simple, what we've got set up for them with, it's got chain link fence across one side. And then and then the back is wood or...
Yeah, back wall of the barn is the rest of it.
Yeah. And it's worked very well for us. Our pigs have about 50 square feet of space per pig.
By contrast, the conventional area given to a slaughter weight pig would be about 9 square feet, so 9 versus 50.
We talked a little bit about pasturing pigs. We do not pasture ours because of the amount of damage that they can do. So here's an example of, this is where pigs have gone on, and this is where they were. And they can absolutely destroy, if you are going to try and pasture pigs, and people tell us about pasturing pigs and stuff like that, you've got to move them very frequently, every 24 hours.
Or pasture them where you want some serious landscape changes to happen.
So this would be really good if you wanted to come in and wanted to reseed an area, bring pigs in. We know somebody who pastures his on the next garden plot for that next year. So he brings them in. What we have found is, again, you better be moving them because on clay soil they pack it down. So it didn't really help us a lot. They certainly took out the weeds and things like that, but it was pretty packed down. The main thing that we're interested in for our pigs, as Beth has mentioned, is compost building. Okay, so everything goes through them first, and then it goes out. Although we leave them in bedding, deep bedding for a long time. Okay, so we just keep adding bedding, add bedding, and then at some point we come in and dig all that out, and that's a job.
Excuse me, what do you mean by bedding?
Hay.
Any kind of carbon that'll go under a pig, shredded paper, hay, straw,
Stuff from the
leaves.
garden.
I wouldn't recommend wood chips because they don't absorb moisture very well. They just kind of pack down and stay wet, at least for us, but sawdust works just fine. So carbon is a trap for nitrogen. Manure and urine are full of nitrogen. You want it back in your soil to help things grow, just like NPK and chemical fertilizer is what gives it that growth boost. You're trying to capture your farm's nitrogen and everything else. Nitrogen's volatile, so you're trying to combine it with carbon, and it's like 30 parts carbon, 1 part nitrogen to keep your nitrogen bound up. And the easiest way to do that is to put down a lot of bedding and let it absorb.
We'll go up and down alleyways. In the little town that we live next to, Toronto, Ohio, we'll go up and down the alleyways and get their lawn waste and stuff like that, and that can go in there. Only thing you have to be a little bit concerned about is with the lawn waste, what do they spray it with? But, so sometimes that will just go into the compost, but leaves and stuff like that can go in there. And we recently learned from a little 4-year-old that pigs like
Pruning.
sticks.
They like sticks to eat, folks. So I take my apple tree prunings and feed them to the sheep. But if I didn't have enough sheep to eat my fruit tree prunings, I could throw them. I tried it after this little 4-year-old told me about it. She said, those pigs will eat sticks. And I said, I know, honey, I give my pigs, a chunk of charred wood so that they'll eat it. So they'll eat the charcoal. And she said, no, I mean they'll eat sticks. She showed me. Those pigs just ate it right away, so I learned something new. You don't know what minerals they're picking up out of those sticks. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Question, you have offal from other butchering, so when you butcher your chickens and
We feed it to the pigs.
you give them everything?
We don't give them pig offal.
No, not
But
pig,
do we give them
the other
feathers?
species.
We don't give them feathers, do
Not
we?
in feathers, okay.
No, I would happily dump a bucket of feathers into the pig pen and let them mix it in. If I don't do that, then it just goes on the compost pile. But actually, when we butcher chickens, you got your scalding pot going to keep your water hot. What color's the water when I'm done? It's like really brown. It's full of stuff. Okay, so I'll take that, crank the heat up, and take all the parts that people aren't going to eat, and dump them in there, cook it for a little while, and then give it down to the pigs over the course. If the weather's warm, I'll use it up in 3 days. But you want to talk about pig's favorite chicken soup, way to go. Yes, you can feed animal offal to an omnivore, is everything. So if I'm not using the heads and feet, it's heads and feet. It's guts and whatever feathers ended up in there, right.
Why do you cook it?
That's a good question. I don't have to cook it. And I'm not. Why do we cook it? Because my chickens visit my pig pen, and I don't want my pigs to smell my chickens and think, last time I smelled that, it tasted great. So I cook it just so they can't identify it, but you could feed it raw. There might be a pathogen issue, but in general, pathogen issues happen because there's too many nutrients in one place and not enough sunlight and clean air. And on a little tiny farm with a reasonable number of animals, old farms used to be like 12 cows, about that many, about 6 sows and their piglets, and a flock of 50 chickens. At that size, the sunlight and air and rainfall are doing their job, and you just aren't looking at the same pathogen problems.
And I don't know if you said that we don't feed animals back to.
Right, we never feed a species back to itself, just sort of frowning in general upon cannibalism, even though I don't really think that's why mad cow disease happened. But we still don't feed animals back to themselves.
Okay. The last note that we have on pigs is dairy shipping fever. So when you bring
Just shipping fever.
when you bring a pig onto the site, sometimes it's been riding in the back of the truck or whatever, and it will get shipping fever. It'll get a cough. It won't do very well. Doesn't want to eat. The first 2 times that it happened, we talked to a vet. Vet came out. First time gave us a lot of antibiotics and stuff like that, and still we lost several of the pigs. The second time, did we give them antibiotics the second time?
So the second time, first time she just didn't come for a couple of days.
Oh, that's right.
And we lost 3 out of 4 pigs. This was a few years back. So we got, the guy who sold us those pigs replaced them because they got sick the minute they left his farm and died. So we replaced them. Those 3 immediately got shipping fever. The reason for shipping fever is usually I have gone from one environment to another very different environment, and I am not, my immune system isn't prepared to deal with those pathogens, right? They got shipping fever, and she came immediately, and she pumped them full of antibiotics, and she saved most of them, and then they never grew. A lot of times a young animal that gets pneumonia, which is what shipping fever usually is, has sufficient lung damage that their lung capacity no longer carries the body weight that they would otherwise genetically be capable of. So we've had those animals for 8, 9, 10 months, and then they never grew anyway. So we finally butchered them at 125 pounds. And then the third time, next year, we're still trusting this farmer. We go back and we get pigs from him, we bring them on the place. And they all got shipping fever. And we said, sorry guys, but we're not going to put the money into vet fees and antibiotics just to have pigs that won't grow. You're for it. But we're humane people. So while we're visiting these pigs who are on the death list, every time we go down there, we take...
And this is on another, we raise these pigs with another guy.
We take about a quart of colostrum down or milk down and just pour it in their trough in case they want to die comfortable, right? And they'd hear the sound of the colostrum hitting the trough, and they'd leap to their feet, race over, take about 3 gulps, and then collapse on the straw panting because they could hardly breathe. And we thought, you're going to die. About 4 or 5 times that day we went down and poured the milk in. They're still alive in the morning. We do the same thing. Day 3, they're starting to get better. Day 4, they're a lot better. Day 5, you can't tell they were sick. And at 8 months, 6, 7, 8 months, they're market weight, and they're beautiful, and we ate them. Which is just one more demonstration of the fitness of dairy products to be used as pig food. And since then, we have passed that tip on to neighboring farmers who have all used it and said, yep, sure does.
What you brought them back in, was it enclosed, or were they in the air?
We were moving farms from moving pigs from a slatted floor in a closed situation to a comfortable barn with 3 walls, open air on one side, straw underneath. I think it's just lots of new stuff they hadn't breathed before, plus the temperature variations from day to night are bigger than the temperature variations in a closed barn with 100 other hogs. Yeah. Okay. That's my guess. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
How old do you get them, and how many do you have at a time?
We buy them at about 35 pound.
Yeah, well, they always say 50-pound pigs.
Right. When you see them advertised, it'll say,
Yes, that's right.
they'll say 50-pound pig, $1 a pound. But if you show up in time to buy any, they're probably 35 pounds at that point, and you're still going to pay $50. Because if you wait till they're actually 50 pounds, you'll pay $50 if they're still there.
And the other problem is that people grow 4-H pigs, and those things are expensive.
Right, they pay
so
big.
we're getting the non-4-H pigs.
We're getting the ones that were either left over or lower end, like don't qualify as club pigs. And so we're grateful to pay $50 a pound for a $35 pig. It's okay, because if I waited till he was 50 pounds, somebody else would have bought him already.
And how many do you buy at one time?
About 4, so I would say we do.
We usually get 4 pig lots, and we buy a new lot before we butcher the old lot, because I never don't want to have pigs, because there's buttermilk, skim milk, and whey coming out of the kitchen all the time, right? So when I have pigs approaching slaughter weight, I let my pig farmer friend know that I'm going to be looking for weanlings, and I make sure I got 4 in there before the last pig goes, before we hang the last pig, before we put her on hooks. Yes, ma'am.
Aconite is a homeopathic remedy that can be used for shipping fever preventively.
Oh, that's good to know. How much do you give them?
Could you say what it is again?
Aconite.
Okay. Homeopathic.
How much do you give them?
Well, probably 30C, like for each pig, maybe 6 to 8 pellets.
And just dump it in their water?
Put it in their water
The day before you
the
move.
day before and the day of,
Oh, yeah,
and
nice.
when they get back,
Yeah.
like for the next day.
So
For cows
homeopathic,
as well.
homeopathic, aconite. Doesn't take very much if you know your homeopathy for shipping fever in pigs and cows.
Yeah,
Pigs and calves
goats.
too.
Anybody that's gonna ship or that's gonna be in the wind or change of environment.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great to know.
Yes.
Talk about the use of your pig litter after, when you pull it out of the pen.
So then we put it straight into the compost. Or we put it on the garden, but generally it goes into the compost.
Yeah, I almost
and then
never
it
go
gets
straight to
mixed.
the garden. There are intestinal worms that are common to humans and pigs. I have no objection to parasites in small loads. They're good for your health. That's how we all evolved, with parasites just in little amounts. There's a lot of study out there now that says if you think they're your enemy and you kill them off, you're going to find you've thrown your own system off. But I don't want a lot of worms in there, so I do compost my pig manure first, and we have never had a problem. We've butchered of our hogs. So we raise 2 sets of hogs. We have a friend up the road who taught us how to butcher. He raises them conventionally. We always club with him and another farmer to raise 4 pigs. One of those comes home with us.
Those are, it's very interesting because those are as close to commercial.
They're pellet-fed
They're
pigs.
pellet fed. We grow them just like the others.
They
They
grow
grow
very
really
fast.
fast. They're good, fine. It's just not our style.
Every once in a while, we'll find a parasite load in one of those when we butcher. Our home pigs do not have a noticeable parasite load. They're on deep litter. It is composting under them. There's just not a buildup of manure to create that. Plus, their own mineral balance, their foods range all over the place. They're eating good stuff. So they just
So giving them milk, and they're getting all that.
yeah, so they have a lot of probiotic milk. Whatever the reason, if the parts that you're in control of imitate nature, the parts you're not in control of seem to iron themselves out. That's not to say there are no disasters when you do it right. Nobody is doing it so right it's perfect. It's a fallen world. But you imitate nature with the parts you can affect, and nature will come in to help you with the parts that you don't even know exist.
Other questions?
How long you grow? You said 2 years.
Oh, no, we never have hog for 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, it probably suffice it to say that we're getting a new lot of pigs once or twice a year. Let me think about this. 8 months? 8 months. Might be longer.
I think it's probably longer.
Look at it this way. If I put 4 pigs in a pen and they're competing for food, 2 of those are going to grow really fast. They're going to get butchered at 8 months. And the other 2 are going to be around while I'm replacing them with 4 new piglets. Then they'll get butchered, and of those 4 piglets, 2 will be butchered at 8 and 2 closer to 12. That's an oversimplification, but it's a pretty clear picture of what's going on. The fast-growing ones, 8 months. Slow-growing ones, closer to 12, 10 to 12.
I think they learn that and they start growing slower.
Somebody warns them.
Do you hang them for a while too?
No, you don't hang pigs for
Well, we don't.
any length. Do people?
Yeah, somebody told me a while back that he hangs his hogs for a week.
Yeah,
We
don't
butcher
hang
one.
ours.
We butcher, chill overnight, cut the next day.
We do our
You hang
pigs.
for a week.
Oh, really?
Tell me about that. Like, what do you see as changing in that week?
It's not like my operation, I'm just helping, so I've never done it any other way.
Well, since what's going on, if it's above freezing, is that there's some bacterial activity happening there. You probably have tenderer meat. You probably also have slightly more whatever that word is, flavorful meat as well. I'm saying that just because that's what happens with cows and even with chickens. If I butcher a laying hen, I'll pluck her gutter and shove her to the back of the fridge for 2 days, and she will be tenderer and tastier after that.
You cure or smoke or salt
We do all 3.
All of them. Yeah.
Those are all easily done at home. Get Meredith's book.
Yeah, so, yeah, and with the thing that's been interesting with we always used to make sausage, okay, in a big, huge amount. We would do that with the guy up the road. We started bringing in just the ground pork, not seasoned or anything like that. And our daughter started seasoning it as we went. That meant she could make whatever kind of sausage she wanted to on any particular thing. And she got really good at it. So
Putting up ground pork is nice, and then
Yeah.
seasoning it afterward. We'll scrape our own casings and fill as much, make sausage to fill those casings, and then freeze the rest as bulk sausage. Yes, sir?
If you're going to do sausage, is there any advantage to cooling it overnight?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's easier to work with cooler meat. With pig meat, if it's warm, it tends to grind really fine, almost down to paste. And so you get this super fine grind. It's still nice. We've done it. So we thought this looks weird, and it cooked up just fine. But yeah, I'm typically going to have my meat chilled if I want to grind. And Meredith would say that. Chill that. Drop ice on it. Cool that meat before you grind it.
When we're getting ready to do sausage, we're putting it in ice cold water.
Right.
And rolling it in that.
Because we're adding some water as we mix so that the spices absorb some of that water. So yeah, we generally do chill before we make sausage.
Yeah.
Like your number one high quality nutrient for pigs is milk, and your number one backup source for using up milk is pigs. So you want milk to go into your pigs because it's good for your pigs, and you want pigs to drink your milk because your farm's going to be making more milk than you know what to do with.
Can you elaborate just a little bit more on your pens?
Okay, we put railroad ties on the bottom, and there are probably people who would say, oh, I can't believe you're putting railroad ties, because they have a lot of toxic.
So these are old ones, and they're covered with a lot of bedding. So it means we aren't certified organic, but we didn't care anyway.
And then we run a pipe across the top, and that chain link fence is really, it's woven through that pipe, and then we put a pipe on the bottom, and it's woven through that as well, and then that pipe is really tied down, because those pigs rub up against that, and they do.
So we either have wooden walls, like the back wall of the barn, or these chain link fence walls.
So no electric wire? No electric?
We use electric wire if they're out in a garden or on the pasture, but as we said, we keep them away from our good pastures. But 2 strands of even one will hold a hog if it's trained to it.
Yeah, we found the chain link fence works pretty well if it's really tied at the bottom and really tied up. Yeah.
Does your book address how to handle all the animals in the winter?
Yes, we do talk about wintering animals. I don't know what your average lows are here, but wintertime changes everything because water freezes. We do talk about housing and water.
Winter water in the do-it-yourself water talk.